Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? First of all, I would like to introduce to you Paritosh Mehta. Paritosh is a commissioning editor at Omni Television, which is a Canadian channel owned by Rogers, and he's based in Toronto. This is a multicultural channel which produces documentaries and long features on issues dealing with multicultural and ethnic communities in Canada, who are perhaps about two dozen in number, Paritosh?
On an average, about 40 languages on an annual basis.
Yes, and he monitors a huge fund there, documentary fund, which he manages. So we're going to try to make this session interactive. And initially, I think he has a short presentation. And as we go along, we'll keep stopping. So there's questions and answers. And I'd also like to share with you my own experience in film production with Paritosh Mehta, but a little later. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for tonight for coming here for this masterclass. Thank you, Meera Devan. Thank you, the festival, for inviting me here today. What I'm going to present to you today is going to be, I come from the other side of the fence, meaning I look at proposals on an annual basis, proposals that come to us for funding, and what we look for in a proposal. So I'll give you some points as to what you have to do as a producer when you're approaching broadcasters, and also to give you a little bit of an insight what the broadcaster is thinking when they are looking at a proposal. So it gives you some concept as why your proposal is either successful or not successful. I will also give you eventually some places where you can approach for funding, give you a little bit of a brief on what a budget should look like or what a proposal should look like. So let's start with where we are. I think, and I'll give you a little bit of brief of myself. I've been working for 15 years in Rogers Media in Toronto. Rogers is a big conglomerate. It's a multi-faceted firm. It's a telecom company, broadcaster. It also has sports franchises. This fund that I monitor and administer is a $65 million fund that looks at producing documentaries, funding documentaries in languages other than English or French. Canada is a country of immigrants. Canada has had a huge influx of immigrants from all over the world. India is one of the top, from India we get several hundred thousand immigrants every year. The fund funds a lot of stories that are either biographical in nature, either POV, either narrative, subject-driven, political, you name it. And I'll start with a little bit of my first slide I'm going to mention over here is this masterclass will orient, as I say, conceptualization of ideas, approaching on pitching the idea to a prospective broadcaster, practical aspects of directing and producing and preparing a budget. Now, oftentimes people ask me this question is that I have an idea. I think this idea is great for a documentary. And how do I pitch it? And that's, this question I get pitched all the time. So you start with a concept. What concept do you have? And you have to really ask yourself this concept is this concept a documentary concept, or is it, or what, in what form you want to take it. Eventually, what you're really doing is actually storytelling. Good documentary is good storytelling. That's what it really is. Is you really want to be able to tell that story in a manner that's it has a start, it has a beginning and an end. We get stories on a piece of paper. Sometimes it's well written. And I can tell you something is that you really don't need to have a proposal that's like 10 pages long. Even a page or two, that's fine, as long as you convey the idea in a very short manner oftentimes the broadcaster doesn't have time to read pages and pages of documents. As long as you just send one page, but the page has absolutely all the ingredients that the broadcaster needs, that's enough. And I'll go through with you examples of what a proposal should look like. And I'll also go through with what a budget, because oftentimes the producer really doesn't know. If it's a first-time producer, they really have no idea as to what the budget should have and should have, what it should not have. Once a broadcaster gives you the go-ahead to do the film, you will be expected to really come up with the film and with all ingredients. And if you haven't put the item in the budget, you will be liable to really produce the documentary and you'll be out of pocket. So you really have to make sure that the budget is well crafted. The budget has all the ingredients that you really should, that the broadcaster needs and what the film will require. So for example, if you say that I'm going to produce the documentary in an HD format, if you haven't put that into your budget, then you will be likely liable because the broadcaster is going to expect an HD and you haven't not put HD. So that's something that you want to make sure that it's there in the budget, things of that nature. So let's proceed from there. I'll go through the practicals with you, research the buyers, how to approach broadcasters, etc. Okay. So before you pitch your idea to a broadcaster, you first have to analyze your idea, your business plan, your market, and your realistic chances of success. Let me stop for a moment and tell you about this, is that, a documentary, an average length of the documentary is about 48 minutes. Sometimes it's even longer than that. It's about, some broadcasters will say 50 minutes. In the festivals, sometimes a documentary is hour and a half, it's 90 minutes. So if you're going to tell a story, if you have an idea, you have to first ask yourself this question, do I have enough in the story that I can give a story for a 48-minute or a 90-minute version? Oftentimes, the idea may not have that legs. It may not have that much steam in the story to keep you rooted for a 90-minute story. I often tell a producer is that, can you tell me a story in the 10 minutes or in 90 minutes? If you have a lot of steam in the story, then you can continue on for an hour. Otherwise, you may as well take that story to a news channel and ask them to produce it as a news story. So you really have to differentiate what is a news story versus what is a documentary story. And that's very key in the matter. Once you have accomplished the soul searching, you can begin to look at who the broadcasters are and what they are buying. And this is very important. Not all broadcasters are interested in your story. Each broadcaster has a mandate, and you have to research that mandate. It's as easy by going on their website and knowing what programs they do. Often, most broadcasters these days have a schedule on their website. Go on their website and see what schedule there is, see what programs they have, or call them. Oftentimes, broadcasters will answer the phone and they can ask them that question, what kind of stories you're really looking for? And you get all the answers over there. That's the research you do before you actually pick up the phone or call a broadcaster, or for that matter, send a proposal to the broadcaster.
Would anybody have any further questions on the points raised by Mr. Mehta? Go ahead, please. Could you give a mic, please? Maybe it's better for everybody. At this stage, I'd also noticed Mr. Kundu is here. Welcome, Mr. Kundu. As we all know, he's the Director General of the Films Division, and which is where most filmmakers started their first productions, including Satyajit Ray onwards. And he's what perhaps Omni is to Canada.
Oh, no, thank you.
Mr. Kundu,
yes.
Would you like to come up, please? Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, you said that ideally a typical documentary would be around 48 minutes. So what's the reason behind being 48
Yeah,
minutes?
that's in the Canadian context. I think he's talking.
Because in India it is said to be 26 minutes
Yes,
and
yes.
50.
It really
He'll
depends.
explain to you.
And you're absolutely right. I think I'm talking primarily from the North American market. It's 48 minutes. Over here, it may be high, it may be longer. And oftentimes, these lengths you can actually get from the broadcaster, or from whoever is. If it's a broadcaster that you're working with, they will be able to explain to you what length it is. But suffice to say, the idea that you have, you really want to make sure you have that much steam in the story that takes it to that level. But you're right, the length is dictated by the broadcaster.
So do you mean to say that, say, a 20-minute film is, does
It's-
duration fall in a documentary or not? You call it a film or not?
You know what? Documentaries come in various lengths. We have done half-hour documentaries that are 24 minutes. 20-minute is a very odd number for us, for me in
Yeah,
particular.
I mean to say a shorter film.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
no, absolutely.
He clarified that right at the outset, that there may be enough meat in the story for a 10-minute film. If you can say it in 10 minutes, please don't stretch it to 48 just because our maximum slot is 48.
But you're right. I mean, we have done all lengths. We've done 24 minutes. We've done 48 minutes. We've done 90 minutes. So that's, I think, you have to ask us, the broadcaster will dictate that to you as what length they would like it. And the reason is because they can then slot it better. For us, for me in particular, I don't like to have a 24-minute documentary. The reason being, it's difficult to slot that. For me, it's easier to slot a 48-minute version than a half-hour version. And that's I work with those parameters. But there may be a broadcaster over here who likes half-hour, and in which case, it's a perfect fit for them.
Right. Thank you.
Should we move ahead
Yeah.
beyond the practicals?
So I think that being said, the next question I have is, do you really want to propose this idea? Do you know your material? Oftentimes we get the same question as that. The producers come with various degrees of preparation. People come and say, I have an idea, and they're very vague about the idea. And you just, as a broadcaster, when you're sitting down in front of a producer, you want to inspire that sense of passion. You want to inspire the sense of confidence to the broadcaster that I know what I have. I know I can do it. And oftentimes that is essential. We get so many proposals on a yearly basis, or most broadcasters do, most funding agencies do, that if your proposal doesn't stick out, your idea doesn't stick out, or in the rare occasion that we are meeting you, if the passion in your story doesn't transcend to us, then if we don't have that, it's the key thing is that your story may be perfect, but it's not coming through to the broadcaster, in which case it just goes down the pile. It's as easy as that. So where I always tell producers is that if you have a story idea, please have that passion. And the passion comes from you really believe in the story. The passion comes from the fact that you've done ample research, that you're able to convince the broadcasters or stakeholders. And the reason I'm saying broadcasters because I come from a broadcast background, but it could be any stakeholders for that matter. Most people get hundreds of proposals, and we are in the stage right now where there's always going to be less money for projects and many, many more projects to fund. So the question is that how can you get your project in front of the pile that the stakeholder is going to fund it? So that's the key thing. You really have to find these tools to really empower your own proposal and get it to the broadcaster or a funding stakeholder that they can fund it. That's the key thing. You really have to find these tools to really empower your own proposal and get it to the broadcaster or a funding stakeholder that they can fund it.
So can you tell us what works? What are these secrets that makes your proposal stand out other than the passion? How do you project this passion?
The thing is that main thing is that if you have an idea, I always tell people, give me a one-line focus without an and a but. So if the story is about my story today, my focus is about telling a story on Meera Dewan. And it's a biography. As simple as that. I don't want to hear anything more than that because I get who it is. But the thing is that to develop that one-line focus takes a lot of work. It's not an easy thing. You really have to write, rewrite, to get that one-line focus. And it's basically what you say is an elevator pitch. You have to be able to, you know, when you get in front of a commissioning editor or a or a committee for that matter, you really have no time to explain yourself by saying, oh, but you know, Meera has done this, Meera has done that. You really want to say, this is a story about this. Or if it's if it is a subject-driven documentary, then you want to say, this story, for example, is in the 1971 Bangladesh war. You know, keep it simple. It's very easy to complicate matters. Believe me, it's the challenge really is to keep it simple. And the simplicity is what oftentimes grabs the attention of a broadcaster. You know, you can throw a lot of numbers in there, you can throw a lot of statistics in there, and that doesn't grab me. So when oftentimes we read proposals, and at work, we have a committee that reads it. We all go through the proposals ourselves, we take a look at it, and oftentimes, the key thing, the simplicity in the idea that is conveyed to us. That is what the proposal should be. Certainly, when I meet you face to face, the enthusiasm comes in, but at the surface level, when I first get the proposal, it's just a simple paper. And that paper has to transcend and say, okay, great, and now I know what the focus is. Then I go to the treatment later, but the focus has to stand out to me. That's exactly what it is. Hope that answers your question.
Any clarifications on this?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. The other thing is that you know, who will the project appeal to? A broadcaster or an audience, and that I've already explained to you. I think the key thing is that you research your broadcaster, research your stakeholders, whoever it is, whether you're applying to an institution like the Rockefeller Foundation or you're applying to the Tribeca Films or any stakeholders for that matter, whether in India or abroad, research your stakeholder to see whether they are funding such projects or not. That's the key thing. Producers, oftentimes producers just send proposals en masse, and you know it is en masse because oftentimes these proposals really don't apply to the broadcaster. Please don't do that. Research the foundation because that's the first step. Is this project feasible or is it wishful thinking? I think I've already explained to you about that. Are you filling a need? You must give broadcast. Now, this is very important, is that are you filling a need? You must give broadcasters what they want as opposed to what you think they need. Same thing over here. My focus at work is to select proposals that deal with the ethnocultural diversity in Canada. It's a very lofty thought, but what it really means is that the documentary proposals that I choose are based on the ethnic diversity in Canada. If you come to me with a story on, I want to do a story on the World Cup football, how is that applicable to me? It really is not. You may want to do the story, but the broadcaster has no interest in that story. So really you want to pitch to a broadcaster knowing fully well what the broadcaster wants, not what you want to do. Then you really want to do your research well in advance because that you're wasting your time and the broadcaster's time. Has this concept been done before? If so, what is your unique proposition? And oftentimes we get stories that have been done before. For example, let me give you an example on refugee settlement, or for that matter, on immigration. These are not new stories. These are stories that have been done often. But if you have a new take to a story, if you have an example of a story that is unique, it's contemporary, that is what we will want. And that is what you should state, that this is a unique take, a contemporary take on a story that already exists over here. That is what I would say is that it has already been done before. Go with the new, make sure that the broadcaster is aware, make sure your focus is very tight and it exists of that nature. Can you really make this project happen, or are you just fishing? The same thing is that, do you have the capabilities of doing this project, or you are just trying to entice the broadcaster with this idea? We get proposals all the time where you get an idea, it sounds interesting, but the producer has not much experience in this matter. You want to make sure that you have that in you to do the proposal in the long run. You have to have a business and a marketing plan. That's essential. One thing I should mention this to you is that, oftentimes people say, when you ask them the simple question, why do you want to do documentaries? They say, oh, I want to be in a creative medium. But guess what? Documentary making is 80% paperwork. It's just 20% creative. I can tell you this right now. The amount of paperwork you'll be doing in producing a documentary, it's really a business. Think of it as a business. I was talking very recently to Gurmeet Monga from the producer, and both of us agreed that producers have to start thinking of doing documentaries or filmmaking as a business first. It is creative, but the creative part is less. If you start thinking as a business, then you will understand what's involved. There's a lot of paperwork, and when you apply to foreign foundations, to foreign foundations for grants, or to any place for grants, you will realize the amount of paperwork there is involved in that. And that is important to understand. You need to start getting your head into that space as well. Start